circumstances. This meeting will be conducted by WebEx and will be recorded. Members of the public will be able to monitor this meeting by calling the number and the passcode listed on the posted agenda, or by clicking the link on the agenda to view the live stream of the meeting. WebEx has a written chat function. Only use of that function, the only use that function is to address technical difficulties such as not being able to hear. We will communicate with each other only through speaking. This ensures that even people listening to just the recording can hear all comments shared by members and staff during the meeting. So with that, if there are no corrections or additions, changes to the agenda, we'll move forward.
Chair,
yes.
This is Michelle. My count, we only have 3 council members online right now.
Okay.
So we would not be able to vote.
Okay.
I think I would hold off maybe doing a roll call.
Okay.
So
I see 5.
You can wait. Pardon? You see? Okay, good. If you see 5, I'm only seeing 3 in the participation.
We've got Lee, Cummings, Vento, Johnson, and Wolf. That's what I can see.
Great, great. Pardon the interruption, and then we can proceed. Sorry, like I was looking at the participant list. Thank you very much, Councilmember Wolf.
So there being no changes to the agenda, we'll move forward with approval of the minutes of the July 20th, 2020 regular meeting of the Community Development Committee. Is there a motion to approve?
Johnson moves.
Johnson moves. Councilmember Lee seconds. Any additions, corrections, amendments? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Michelle?
Thank you, Chair Vento. As I mentioned, Councilmember Muse is out. So I'm going to start with Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom. Wolf.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Thank you.
The motion carried. We'll move forward with agenda item number 4, business number 1. We will hear the 2020-212 Credit River Township 2040 Comprehensive Sewer Plan and Sewer Plan. Mr. Boylan.
Thank you, Chair Vento. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. As said, I'm Patrick Boylan. I'm the sector representative for Districts 13, 14, 15, and 16. And Credit River Township is is located in Scott County as part of District 16. I'd like to let the committee know that Cindy Nash, Credit River Township's and consulting planner with Collaborative Planning, is participating in this call. Shane Nelson of Hawkinson and Anderson Engineering is in the audience. And finally, I'd like to welcome Town Board Chairman Chris Kostek to the meeting as well. I'd like to extend, first of all, my thanks to both Cindy and the township in working diligently with us to getting this plan to completion. This represents probably more than 3 years of work, and they were fantastic to work with, and I just want to make a special note at this time. Before you today is a review of Credit River Township's 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Slide for you today shows Figure 1 of the staff report, identifies the location of regional system components within Credit River Township. There are no principal arterials in the township. Regional park system components in the township include Clear Lake Regional Park, Murphy-Hanaran Park Reserve, Scott County Regional Trail, and there are no federal or state recreational lands within the township. There are no sanitary sewer interceptors, regional interceptors in the township, and the township does not currently serve by the regional wastewater system. However, the plan outlines a schedule for constructing a public wastewater collection system and connection to the City of Savage's wastewater collection system in 2021 to 2023. The City of Savage has provided additional capacity within their local trunk sewer system to accommodate the anticipated ultimate sewer development within the township. The council will initiate discussions with Savage to acquire those portions of their trunk system that will provide service to the township. It is anticipated that the completion of the acquisition of the Travis Trunk sewer will occur in 2030. There'll be more details about this with Environmental Services Manager Kyle Colvin at a later date of Environmental Services. Next slide, please. Credit River Township is located in the eastern border of Scott County. It's surrounded by the communities of Savage, Burnsville, Lakeville, Newmarket Township, Cedar Lake Township, Spring Lake Township, and Prior Lake. Figure 2 from the staff report acknowledges the community designations identified in Thrive MSP 2040 as both rural residential and diversified rural. Next slide, please. Figure 3 from the staff report identifies portions in the northwestern portion of the township to be redesignated as emerging suburban edge. That is the pale yellow on the northwest area near Prior Lake and then near the city of Savage, you see. This is to be redesignated as the emerging suburban edge as part of the proposed changes relating to the post-2030 connection to regional wastewater services. Next slide, please. Table 1, also in your staff report, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the council forecast, based on the township proposed forecast, that the township will grow by 750 people, representing 400 households. There will be an increase of 10 jobs in the township in the same time frame. Also shown in this table, the township has requested a population forecast increase for all forecast years and a household increase for 2040. Council staff agrees with this request. The proposed revised forecasts are underlined in this table. The township's proposed 2040 forecast is 6,400 for population, 2,200 households, and 420 employment. Next slide, please. The township requests approval to interconnect with the regional sewer service through the neighboring community as mentioned earlier. Therefore, as seen here, also table 2 of your staff report, council staff recommend changing the households for 2030 and 2040. The original system statement had zeros across the board for sewers. Next slide, please. Table 3 from the staff report, shown here, illustrates the planned residential density in the emerging suburban edge areas of the township. Again, it's those pale yellow areas in the earlier map in the northwest and northern portion of the community. The table shows a near-term connection of 443 existing homes that are currently served by individual septic systems. Those individual homes will be then connected to the regional wastewater system. It also shows that 36.1 acres of medium density and high density residential acres to develop between 328 and 545 units, and expected density range of 9.09 and 15.09 units per acre. The plan is consistent with Thrive land use for residential density policies for both rural residential and diversified rural residential community designations. Plans for post-2030 resident development are consistent with the proposed emerging suburban edge policies. Thrive calls for emerging suburban edge communities, which are served by sanitary sewer, to plan for a forecasted population and household growth at overall average densities of at least 3 to 5 units per acre. The plan for the 2030 to 2040 growth of new households achieves this. Next slide, please. The township's existing land use map refers to figure 4 of your staff report. The existing land uses in Credit River Township are predominantly residential with just under 50%, and most of the remaining portion of the township is agricultural, while parks, commercial, and industrial make up most of the remaining land. Next slide, please. The township's future land use map refers to figure 5 in the staff report. The rural residential portion, located in the southern 2/3 of the township, is characterized by areas dotted with wetland and interspersed with larger agricultural parcels. The plan carries forward the existing development patterns in this area and allows new development at maximum densities of 4 units per 10 acres. The diversified rural portion, located in the northern 1/3 of the township, includes areas that are preserved where post-2040 growth can be provided with cost-effective and efficient urban infrastructure. The plan manages land uses to prevent premature demand for extension of urban services so that existing service levels will meet service needs of the future. This area is identified as long-term sewer service area in the Water Resources Policy Plan. As mentioned earlier, portions of this area will be redesignated to reflect the sewer service that will be expended to the existing developments as well as future planned development. The redesignated emerging suburban edge portion, located again in the northwest corner of the township, includes low, medium, and high density residential land uses consistent with minimum expected densities guided by Thrive. Next slide, please. The township's developing staging refers to figure 6 in the staff report. As mentioned earlier, the township's community designation is proposed to revise in order to reflect future regional super service plans. There will be Thrive will be amended to redesignate the portions of diversified rural area that include low density, medium density, and high density areas to emerging suburban edge in the northwestern corner of the township. As shown here in the development staging map, these areas are shown within the 2030 and 2040 staging periods. Next slide, please. The proposed plan conforms to Metropolitan Council system plans with proposed changes to the regional wastewater system. The plan also is consistent with all council policies with proposed change to forecast and community designation. And the plan is compatible with the plans of adjacent local government units and affected jurisdictions. Next slide, please. The Environment Committee will consider this next week on Tuesday, August 11th, and 2 weeks following, the full council will consider this on Wednesday, the 26th. I just want to remind the committee that Cindy Nash is in attendance. Next slide, please. The proposed action is to authorize Credit River Township to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, revise the township's forecast upward as shown in Table 1, and establish sanitary sewer forecast as shown in Table 2 of the attached review record. Revise this township's community designation for portions of the community to emerging suburban edge as shown in Figure 3 of the attached review record. Next slide, please. Advise the township to provide the council with the date the Scott County Water Management Organization approved the local water management plan and the date the township adopted the final local water management plan. In the final plan submission to the council, update the future parks and trails map on plan pages 4-15, 8-5, and 8-19 to be consistent with the regional parks system map that appears in the township's 2015 system statement, and to implement the advisory comments and review record for land use and water supply. With that, I am available for any questions at this time.
Committee members, any questions or comments? I'm looking and I don't see any hands waving, although can't see everybody. Councilmember Wolf, would you like to make the motion to approve?
I would move the staff recommendation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And is there a second?
Second by Lee.
So we have a motion by Wolf, second by Lee. Before we do the roll call, I just want to congratulate Cindy and Chris and Wendy and Patrick. This is a lot of work, and particularly as you plan going forward with the wastewater management program. So congratulations. It takes a lot to get something like this done, especially in these challenging times.
Madam Chair, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my local planning assistance colleague, Freya Thaman, who did considerable amount of work in working with the township elected officials and their consultants and staff along the way. I carried forward the project and completed this, of course, but tremendous amount of work in 2018 and 2019 by Ms. Thaman.
Great. Thank you for including that, Patrick. Appreciate that. Michelle, will you take the roll, please?
Yes, Chair Vento. Chambliss?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Lindstrom? Wolf?
Aye.
Vento?
Aye.
Thank you.
And the motion carried. Again, congratulations to the Credit River Township team. Our next item is 2020-213 JT, the City of Cottage Grove 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Mr. Porter, you're back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You get me again. Again, I'm Patrick Boylan. I'll be presenting this report on behalf of my manager, Angela Torres. I'd like the committee to know that Mr. Ben Boink is listening in. However, he, as a city planner, I know he has another engagement, so I don't think he'll be listening in for the entire time, but I just wanted to acknowledge his presence, which I think he's present. And I was told by Angela that, again, like Credit River Township, Cottage Grove, the staff did a tremendous job working with us over many months, and we really wanted to thank them and take a second to acknowledge their resourcefulness and their assistance with this. So with that, I am here to present to you the City of Cottage Grove's 2040 plan. Next slide, please. This map reflects Figure 1 of the staff report and identifies the location of regional system components within the City of Cottage Grove. They include the Cottage Grove Marine Regional Park and Great Cloud Island Regional Parks, Central Greenway, Mississippi River, and Prairie View Regional Trail Search Corridors. Metropolitan Council Environmental Services Eagles Point Wastewater Treatment Plant, as well as an interceptor that runs through the center of the city from north to south and 2 meters, and the planned Red Rock Transitway that runs through the city through the city northwest to southeast. Next slide, please. Figure 2 of the staff report identifies the city as suburban edge and a community designation consistent with Thrive MSB 2040. Cottage Grove is located in southern Washington County. It's surrounded by the communities of Woodbury, Afton, Denmark Township, Hastings, Nininger Township, Rosemount, Inver Heights, Great Cloud Island Township, St. Paul Park, and Newport. Next slide, please. Table 1, also in your staff report, shows that between council forecast, city will grow by 8,600 people, 4,000 households, to have an increase of 1,300 jobs in the city in the same time frame. Next slide, please. Table 2, also in your staff report, shows an increase to the sewer service forecast. These changes were requested by the city, and council staff determined the request to be reasonable and not to cause a system impact. The changes are underlined on the table. Next slide, please. Table 3 from the staff report, shown here, illustrates the planned residential density in the developing areas of the city. The overall density for guided residential land is expected between 5.0 and 10.4 units per acre. Communities with a suburban edge designation under Thrive are expected to plan for population forecasts and household growth overall average minimum densities of 3 to 5 units per acre for new development and redevelopment. Cottage Grove's plan is consistent with this policy. Next slide, please. The city's existing land use map refers to Figure 3 of the staff report. Existing development in the city is focused in the northwest quadrant, primarily north of US Highway 61, and commercial and mixed-use development concentrated along the highway corridor. Industrial development is located south of Highway 61 along the Mississippi River. The eastern portion of the city is agricultural, which is the predominant land use in the community of 30%. Residential uses account for about 22% of the city's area, while existing parks and water features comprise 22%. Since the city's jurisdiction includes large portions of the Mississippi River. Next slide, please. The city's future land use map refers to Figure 4 in the staff report as shown here. The city plans to support the forecasted residential growth primarily through mixed-use guiding, which is focused on the future BRT station areas and other major intersections in the community. The plan supports additional residential growth in the low-density residential land use category with smaller areas for medium and high-density residential. Next slide, please. Figure 5 of the staff report identifies the areas of change. Since the adoption of the 2030 comprehensive plan, the city has conducted several small area planning processes and environmental reviews, which have been incorporated into the 2040 plan. This includes planning for the bus rapid transit station areas, business park and industrial expansions, and redevelopment on specific properties. The East Ravine Master Plan, first developed in 2006, continues to be the guiding plan for supporting development on the east side of the urbanized extent of the city, extending north of the Cottage Grove Regional Park and incorporating the preservation of natural features in the area as open spaces. Next slide, please. The proposed findings are that the plan conforms to Metropolitan System plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local government units and affected jurisdictions. Next, please. Like the previous agenda item, this will be reviewed by the Environment Committee next week on Tuesday, August 11th, and 2 weeks following by the full council on Wednesday, August 26th. Next slide, please. Proposed action is to authorize the City of Cottage Grove to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, revise the city's sewer service forecast upward as shown in Table 2 of the attached review record, and to advise the city to provide the date the city adopts the final local water management plan and provide a copy of the final adopted local water management plan for council's records. Within the 60 days of receiving DNR final approval, the city must adopt the Mississippi River Critical Corridor Area Plan and submit a copy of the final adopted plan and evidence of adoption to the DNR, Metropolitan Council, and the National Park Service within 10 days after adoption, and to implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecast, land use, and water supply. That concludes my presentation. I'm available and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Boylan. Any questions from the committee? I don't see any hands waving. So is there a motion to approve?
Wolf moves approval.
Thank you,
Johnson.
Councilmember Wolf.
Johnson
Second?
seconds.
Johnson seconds. All in favor, please, excuse me, we have to have a roll call. Almost blew that.
Thank you, Chair Vento. Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Thank you.
And the motion carried. Mr. Boylan, if you would, please, I don't know if the city planner is still on the call or not, but please pass along our congratulations. I have a nephew who just moved to Cottage Grove last week, and he and his fiance are so excited to start a home there and are very excited to get to know that community. So thank you.
I will do so. Thank you.
Moving on to 2020-214, City of Lake Elmo Applewood Point Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Review File 22215-3. Mrs. Smiley is with us for this presentation. Raya.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair, council members. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. As mentioned, I'm Raya Smiley. I'm a senior planner and local planning assistant here to present to you the comprehensive plan amendment for Applewood Point in the city of Lake Elmo. I do want to mention that we worked with the city of Lake Elmo's community development director on this plan. And with that, I guess next slide, please. Thank you. So this is figure 1 of the staff report. Thrive MSP 2040 gives the city of Lake Elmo a community designation of both rural residential and emerging suburban edge. So you can see that on this map. And the location of the amendment is shown in red on this map, and it's in the part of the city that is designated as emerging suburban edge. Next slide, please. As shown in figure 2 of your staff report, this map shows the regional systems in relation to the amendment site. It includes the I-94 that's along the southern portion of the site, and there are no existing or planned regional park system units in the vicinity of the site. Next slide, please. Can you click one? Thank you. So the proposal is basically to re-guide just short of 12 acres from business park to mixed-use business park to accommodate 103 unit senior housing development. That's because the category of business park doesn't allow for residential. The property is located at the intersection of Hudson Boulevard and Eagle Point Boulevard, as you saw in the previous map. Next slide, please. This is figure 3 of the staff report. It shows the project area in both current future land use map and the proposed future land use map. As shown on the left side map, the current future land use of the site, as I mentioned, is business park, and it's being changed to mixed use business park as shown on the right. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is table 1 of the staff report. It shows the planned residential density in the city. The change that is resulted from this amendment is underlined in this table. So it results in a very slight increase in the overall density of the city from 4 to 4.01 units per acre. This amendment, as I mentioned, is located within the emerging suburban edge area of the city. The emerging suburban edge communities are expected to plan for overall minimum densities of 3 to 5 units per acre, and the city of Lake Elmo for the emerging suburban edge parts of their community continues to be consistent with the Thrive land use policies. Next slide, please. So the findings are that the proposed amendment conforms to regional system plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. Next slide, please. Thank you. And the proposed action before you is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the City of Lake Elmo to place its Applewood Point Comprehensive Plan Amendment into effect, find that the amendment does not change the city's forecast, and advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for transit. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? Hey, not seeing or hearing anyone indicate they have a question. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved by Lee.
Lee moves, Councilmember Lee moves, and a second.
Cummings second.
Councilmember Cummings seconds. Roll call, please, Michelle.
Yes, Chair Vento. Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Smiley, and thank you to the folks in Lake Elmo. Moving on to agenda item number 5. First information item is Regional Parks Policy Plan Amendment and draft system additions and recommendations. We have Emmett Mullen, Colin Kelly, and Jessica Lee with us tonight. And for those of you council members, there is no test on the 71, I think it was 71 page document. I checked on that. And to the staff, thank you for the summary, because I wouldn't have made it through all 71 pages.
Thank you, Chair Vento. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, and thank you for enduring. I think it was 171 pages. I hate to admit that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it was. It's a little daunting, but that's the full Regional Parks Policy Plan amendment. So we just wanted to give you a preview of that, knowing it was coming up, and it was a big deal. But I just want to thank you, Chair Vento, and all the committee members for your time today. To discuss our draft regional park system additions recommendation. As you may remember, we initiated this process back in October 2019 with our regional park agencies. And this process, as I said earlier, is part of a full regional parks policy plan amendment. So we included that full amendment in today's packet. But this presentation is just going to focus on 2 things. And we left off a July meeting with you because we ran out of time. But we want to bring back some revised boundary adjustment language, which Jessica Lee will get to in just a moment. And then we want to share the draft system additions recommendation, which Colin will get to in just a minute. You'll be seeing this same item later this month when we come back to formally kick off the public comment period with you. So thank you for your patience and help with this process. I'll go to the next slide, please. Here's the scope of the Regional Parks Policy Plan Amendment, these 6 items. As I said earlier, number one, regional designations is the focus of this update. This is deciding which proposed units should be part of the regional park system. A few of you got phone calls on this item before our last meeting, if you'll recall. The second item is what Jessica will speak to in just a moment, the boundary adjustments policy clarification. The third item is bridging facilities. The new amendment deepens the language here because currently in the plan, there isn't a lot of information behind what a bridging facility is. Number four, the estimated cost to complete the system. We had a wholesale update of how we measure the cost to complete the system in 2018. This amendment just builds on that. The equity analysis requirement is something that you folks have already approved as part, and now this amendment will formally bring it into the Parks Policy Plan. And then finally, there's a work plan associated with the Regional Parks Policy Plan, the work that needs to go on, and we're going to get into that in greater detail when we come back. As you'll notice, there's a golden box, and I don't know if you can read that, but it says targeted public engagement opportunities. We're going to be conducting a targeted public engagement effort with this policy plan amendment, and we are going to come back in September to discuss this request with you and ask for your help. Next slide, please. Here's the timeline for the Regional Parks Policy Plan, which you've seen a number of times. The two big takeaways that I'd really like you to have are, we're in the lower left-hand corner, which is good. We've crossed that midpoint. Now is about finalizing the draft recommendation and initiating the public comment period. We're on track to do that. And we're also on track to complete this effort by the end of the 2020 calendar year, which has been our goal. So that's great. At this time, I'd like to go to the next slide and ask Jessica Lee to take over for a moment.
Thanks, Emmett. Good afternoon, Chair Vento, members. This is Jessica Lee, Senior Parks Planner. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. So back in June, we discussed boundary adjustments and asked for your feedback. We also received feedback from our regional park implementing agencies. In response to what we've heard, we have a revised proposal to share with you today. So as a reminder, most boundary adjustments are considered through the system additions process. However, minor boundary adjustments can be accomplished through a master plan amendment, which is a much timelier process and helps accommodate the need for land exchanges, boundary corrections, and new acquisition opportunities. Next slide, please. So our proposal is for regional parks, park reserves, and special recreation features. Minor boundary adjustments will be considered for up to a maximum of 100 acres or a maximum of 20% of the approved master plan administrative park boundary. Regional trail realignments will be considered minor boundary adjustments, and regional trail extensions will be considered major boundary adjustments. Next slide, please. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them now. Otherwise, we can keep rolling. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Are there any questions or comments at this point, council members? Anyone? Ms. Lee, you can go, keep going.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm going to take it over again, Chair Vento. This is Emmett, back and better than ever. Here we are with the Minnesota State Statute 473147. And as all you know, this is the Metropolitan Regional Parks Act. And this is the statute that establishes the council's role with the system addition process. It charges the council with the responsibility to identify generally the areas which should be acquired for the system of regional outdoor recreation. Next slide. So, envisioning our regional parks and trails system future. As part of the system additions process, we have been exploring a number of contextual considerations around climate change with the state climatologist, demographic changes with some of our experts in council research, and the rising place of equity, the evolving user needs, trends and expectations, and sustainable funding. When we began this process with you at CDC earlier this year, you asked, so what's your big vision for the regional park system? Next slide, please. Well, here's a map of our existing system. It shows 56 regional parks and park reserves, 8 special recreation features, 49 trails, regional trails, and about 55,000 acres of regional parks and trails land. And it also, this map has the big dots on it, which are search areas, and it has the kind of yellowish lines that are the regional trail search corridors. So this is what exists today. Next slide, please. This is a little of an overwhelming slide, but this is a map of our existing system with the 28 proposals from 8 agencies laid over it. When we talked about what is our shared vision that's emerging, well, this is it. And we're excited about it. After reviewing the 28 current proposals, a few observations. Even though this looks super busy, the truth is largely our existing system is in place, particularly in the urban centers. So our parks, park reserve, and special recreation features largely there. The edges or the periphery of our system continue to be spaces with active acquisition and growth. And now it's about refining, like those boundary adjustments, regional trail extensions, and filling out our current boundaries. The other major takeaway that I'll leave you with is that the future system is about better connecting these parks, park reserves, and special recreation features with regional trails. It's regional trails that are the real growth area of our system. Next slide, please. So the purpose of these next 3 slides is to go over our policy foundation on which we developed our staff recommendation for the system additions process. It's built simply on 3 critical factors or priorities expressed in the Council's policy documents, Thrive 2040 and the Regional Parks Policy Plan. The first one is this one, natural resources. Natural resources, as you can read these different clips from the plans, they underlie our system. We are a natural resource-based system. Next slide, please. Now the second slide, or the second priority is around geographic balance. This is a key consideration in the Council's planning for operations and investment decisions. The Council's intent is that no part of the region is consistently favored or consistently ignored. So geographic balance, while a complex concept, is very central to the regional park system additions. Next slide, please. And then there's the equity consideration, our equity foundation. And here's some language from both Thrive and the policy plan. And we're striving to increase equitable use of regional parks and trails by all of our region's residents. And we did that as we reviewed these system addition requests. Next slide, please. And then I'd like to turn it over to Colin Kelly. Colin.
Thanks, Emmett. And good afternoon, Chair Vento and council members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Great. Yes, once again, I am Colin Kelly, planning analyst, and I'm here to continue the discussion of system additions, which Emmett has started for us. In June, over the course of 2 lengthy Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission meetings, the Commission provided comments and feedback on each of the 28 proposals that we received. Staff carefully considered that feedback and integrated it into further analysis into the areas of expressed council priority, which Emmett just went over in brief: natural resources, geographic balance, and equity. In order for the proposed addition to be deemed regionally significant in this analysis, the proposal had to receive at least 1 high rating in one of the 3 council priority areas. Based on this analysis, council staff find that 26 of the 28 proposed system additions submitted are recommended for inclusion into the system plan, with the caveat that some of the proposed units may require an adjustment in type, size, or extent. Next slide, please. To conduct its analysis, council staff defined high, medium, and low ratings for each of the policy priority areas. These are the high ratings for each of those areas. I should note that all of the ratings definitions, including medium and low, appear on page 13 of the staff report. A high rating for natural resources means acquiring lands with natural qualities most desirable for outdoor recreational activities and protecting an important natural resource feature, such as linking other natural resource areas or water bodies together, which in turn provide a larger natural habitat opportunity, help protect or improve water quality, or provide habitat for protected or endangered species. A high rating for geographic balance means the proposal demonstrates how the proposed unit will provide geographic balance or fill a gap for the 7-county metropolitan area, not just within the agency's jurisdiction. Or such balance is supported by spatial analysis, that is, how the proposed additions relate to existing, planned, and search areas in the overall regional park system. Or Metropolitan Council population forecasts to 2040. To achieve a high rating for equity, the proposed trail or park has significant potential for building a more equitable regional park system. The area is close to census tracts with higher proportions of underserved users. Census tracts near the park or trail have a population that is less than 90% white or with a median household income of less than $85,000. And or the proposal includes evidence of strong equity-focused community engagement, and or the proposed unit is close to transit. Next slide, please. This is the designation of regional significance table, also known as attachment 3 in the staff report found on pages 11 and 12. This table is sorted A to Z by implementing agency, with 6 agencies appearing here, or on page 11 of the staff report, and 2 agencies appearing on page 12 of the staff report. We'll get to those 2 agencies on the next slide. Of the 12 proposals received from these 6 agencies, including Anoka County, Carver County, Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, Ramsey County, St. Paul, and Scott County, 10 of them are recommended for addition. These recommended proposals are indicated with a yes in the column on the far right side of this table. These recommended additions are a combination of recognizing regional status, regional trail search corridors, and a regional park boundary adjustment. Next slide, please. This is the second part of the designation of regional significance table on page 12 of the staff report. Of the 16 proposals received from just these 2 agencies, Three Rivers Park District and Washington County, all 16 of them are recommended for addition. These recommended proposals are indicated with a yes in the column on the far right side of this table, just like the last one. These recommended additions are a combination of regional trail search corridors, regional trail search corridor extensions, regional park search areas, a special recreation feature search area, and boundary adjustments. Again, recommended additions must have a high rating in one or more of the 3 council priority areas. Next slide, please. In summary, 26 proposals are recommended for addition or designation, and these proposals came from each of the agencies who submitted proposals. That is, every agency that submitted a proposal has one or more recommended system additions. 2 of the 26 proposals were recommended for addition following the July 15th MPOSC meeting and after some additional analysis by council staff. In total, the recommendation includes 16 regional trail search corridors or extensions, 4 regional park boundary adjustments, 3 proposed recognition of regional status, 2 regional park search areas, and 1 special recreation feature search area, from large to small. Of the recommended additions, 12 of the proposals were rated high for natural resources, 8 of the proposals were rated high for geographic balance, and 14 proposals were rated high for equity. 1 proposal was rated high for all 3 council priority areas. Congratulations to Scott County for their Lake Marion to Scott West Regional Trail Search Corridor proposal. 8 proposals were rated high for 2 council priority areas. Congrats are in order for Three Rivers Park District, which had 3, Washington County, which had 2, and Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, Ramsey County, and the City of St. Paul, which had 1 apiece. All in all, council staff were really impressed with the generally excellent proposals received and greatly appreciate all of the time and effort that our implementing agency staff partners and council committees have spent on this process to date. Next slide, please. And it is here that we'd like to pause and we welcome your feedback on the following questions. First, do you support the staff facilitated draft recommendation as modified following the July 15th MPOSC meeting? And second, in general, what other advice or guidance do you have for council staff as the draft policy plan amendment is released for public comment later this month? Thank you.
Committee members, are there any comments, advice, guidance? Councilmember Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one comment and one question. My comment was that thanks to the our wonderful park staff for the slide earlier where you show the whole system and you map out the different trails and projects that are in the hopper so that we see how they all kind of align because you know, Councilmember Alice Ingebrigtsen always asks for a larger a picture, a more visual representation of a lot of things we vote on. Some of them may seem abstract to us or even the public that's watching us live online right now, and it's a wonderful way for us to visualize the wonderful things that different cities and counties are working on. So that was my kudos and comment. My question is, unless I missed that, I didn't see any projects from Dakota County, and I represent the northern part of Dakota County, and I was wondering if they didn't just decide not to submit anything.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes, Chair Vento, Councilmember Lee, thank you for that question. Yes, indeed. We only received proposals from 8 of our 10 implementing agencies. And so we did not receive any proposals from either the City of Bloomington or from Dakota County.
Any other comments or questions?
Madam Chair, Council.
Yep, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo what Councilmember Lee said. I think the graphic was really great as well. I want to really thank staff on this too, and MPOSC to get it to where it is today, and particularly because I think the way that we rate and take a look at each of the proposals and weigh it against our overall Thrive plan is really good, and I support all of that. And I also really want to give high praise to staff because the Three Rivers Park District did have the 2 proposals, one proposed in my district, and when really kind of digging deeper as to why they didn't rate high in a couple of the categories and make our recommended list initially, staff also found out that there was some data that just either was misinterpreted or you know, they were able to correct that. So with some census tract digging in, we're able to fix that, and that really is great because you know, it shows that we've got a strong partnership with our implementing park agencies. MPOSC is doing a great job, and we can make those adjustments to again work through a process of partnership as we try to continue to expand our regional park system. So I really support where we're at right now. And as far as any guidance on putting this out for public comment. I mean, I'll just repeat what I say and what we all, I guess, say is, working to, get it in the hands of people who can really push this out to a diverse group of people and individuals that will be potentially using the system, and really, again, working hard on, diversity, inclusion, engagement, and certainly use council members as much as you need to, or we can possibly, push this out so that it gets robust feedback. That would be my only comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments, advice, wisdom? I'm not seeing any. Yes. Oh, Councilmember Chambliss, sorry.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your comments, Judy. I also have several that were addressed by this review in the Three Rivers Park District, and have received some feedback. And as you said, we've got some good partners that recognize an error that was resolved to help make sure that we have that quality check in there. A lot of proposals. Every city or park did not make the cut, but glad that we also have the 2050 process to look at those that did not make the cut. And I'm looking forward to the public comment process as well to get additional feedback.
And if I'm not seeing anyone else, so if you're interested in commenting or offering advice, please speak up. I will just say to Emmett and Jessica and Colin, a friend of mine recently, this was before the March shutdown, was on a flight to New York, and it was delayed a bit because of weather. And she happened to overhear two New Yorkers and another passenger from, I believe it was France, talking about how amazing they found the Twin Cities experience. And the gentleman from France made a point of telling the two New Yorkers to come back when the weather was better so that they could enjoy all the parks and trails in the metro area. Apparently, this individual had been here more than once and was awestruck by our parks and trails system. I had an opportunity recently to listen in on the MPOSC meeting, and I was really impressed with the MPOSC Commission members. The chair Russo, leads a great meeting. The members are very involved, and the staff does a terrific job. So kudos. Next. Is there anything else that we need to cover here?
Thank you, Chair Bento.
Yes.
Yes, I would also like to say thank you, Chair Vento. That does conclude our presentation of the draft Regional Parks Policy Plan Amendment and the draft System Additions recommendation. So we very much appreciate your time and feedback on this.
Thank you. Thank you all. This was a great presentation. After lots of discussion, it's good to see the results of all that work. Our next information item is item number 2, connecting youth with the regional park system. Darcy Vandergrift is going to introduce the others who will be presenting with her. Darcy, welcome.
Chair Vento and committee members, thank you so much. I'm actually, the introduction is going to be done by my colleague, Lucia Marquez-Regan, so I'm going to turn it over to her to get us kicked off.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucia Marquez-Regan. I'm a member of the Youth and Parks Research Team based out of Community Development Research. With me tonight is Ellie Hohulin. I'd like to bring out the other members of the research team on camera to also say hi. The first is Gunnar Carlson. And we have Sarah Gong. We have Sarah Gong. And finally, Darcy Vandegrift.
Hello again, and I just wanted to let everyone know that some of our community partners who were working with the research on us are watching live this evening. I received notice from Urban Roots and from Organization of Librarians in Minnesota and Outdoor Latino Minnesota that they would be listening in. So welcome to them. I'm so glad they're joining us.
Yes, welcome. Ellie, Gunnar, Sarah, and I are interns at the council, and Darcy is a parks researcher. Tonight we'll be sharing with you the Youth and Parks research questions, process, findings, outcomes, and further recommendations. We wanted the research process to create access for parks for young people ages 14 to 20. We wanted to center community expertise and knowledge in the park planning process. We wanted to intentionally work to build a pipeline of future parks and planning researchers through participation in the research opportunity for the youth visiting the parks and for our research team. There is so much more to the project, but tonight we'll give you a brief overview. Next slide, please. This is a qualitative research project, meaning that we focus on thoughts, words, feelings, situations, and environments. Research participants told us why the research was important because they shared with us why they wanted to get into parks and trails. Youth participated in the research through analyzing data, creating presentations, and advising planners on master plans. The photo on the right demonstrates one of the youth from Troop 100 analyzing a park setting as a part of the field research challenge. The quote on the left reads, "Going outside can reinvigorate how we see things. Parks are always important because we are human, we are connected with nature, we are grounded in the earth. Being in the park is a way of being human." This quote is one of the many ways that participants explained why they thought this research was important. Next slide, please. Youth in Parks research was designed with some guiding questions we share here. What are obstacles to youth access? Some related areas to this research that this research explored were what prevents youth from accessing parks or having a positive experience? What are the specific needs of youth from underserved populations? Another question was, what does a great day in the park look like? What advice and/or assets do youth have for advising the park about connecting with the next generation of Minnesotans to the outdoors? Youth generated advice about programming, staffing, facilities, preferred interpersonal connections, preferred activities. And lastly, how can park implementing agencies and the council build connections that remove obstacles to park access and create outdoor access for young people? With those questions in mind, we'll go to our next slide, the research process. We designed this research to provide implementing agencies and the council insight on the questions I mentioned in the previous slide through a three-step process. The first step is creating a team. So the youth-serving organizations were chosen as micro-consultants through a low barrier to entry competitive process. We sought youth of high school age and ended up working with youth ages 6 to 19, but mostly high schoolers. Teams assembled, researchers were hired, and park agency staff volunteered through an open call to all agencies. Next slide, please. The second step, designing experiences and generating data from youth park connections. Then we met with each organization twice to talk about motivations for our participation, desired activities, obstacles to participation, and park experience planning. In coordination with park staff, we created in-park experiences. We worked with staff by meeting with them before the experience, and we shared what each youth group wanted from the visit. These experiences were guided by naturalists and staff in activities that included hiking, tree identification, plant and animal identification, photography, a cultural history walk, bonfire storytelling, and s'mores. All programming included flexibility for youth to enjoy activities such as racing on the trail, arts and crafts, hanging out, playing tag, and taking photos. These accomplished the outcome of connecting youth with parks. Additionally, it provided firsthand experience with nature-based resources in which youth could evaluate park programming, facilities, staff, and the experience of being a young person in the park. Next slide, please. And the third step, data analysis. After 5 in-park experiences, the research team met with the youth-serving organizations for a post-park validity conversation after compiling and coding field notes, interview transcripts, photos, videos to create our end products. Next slide, please. So this is about partnerships. Youth-serving organizations were recruited through participation through a short application process. Applicants were selected by a committee of youth, council staff, and community members. Organizations were chosen to have the cross-section of prior experience, a focus on underserved populations, and to obtain geographic diversity. Organizations included Hmong, Liberian, Latinx, African American, and Asian communities. All implementing agencies were invited to participate, and all who volunteered were matched with a youth organization that was located close to the agency. The purpose of this match was to create a long-term relationship between the agency and the organization. To date, 2 of the 5 pairings have resulted in continued work. 2 of the 5 have resulted in engagement around park master planning. We also partnered with a consulting researcher, Chao Cheng Bang, while working with Scout Troop 100. Each group was a part of the in-park experience, except for the Three Rivers Park District Team Council, who participated in the validity conversation. Now we will look at how we analyze the data. Next slide, please. In this study, we analyzed each finding's importance to youth based on several criteria. On this slide, you'll see how we ensured that our recommendations were important to youth, representative of the data, and helpful in strengthening youth park connections. We looked for recommendations to emerge at 4 points in the data generation and analysis. The first being observed in the park. In the park experience itself, how did this element affect the group, or how was it defined by the group? What did youth say in the park? How did they feel or express themselves while saying it? When a part of the park experience happened, did youth pay attention or were they disengaged? During this element, did they express interest, curiosity, enthusiasm, or happiness? The second being youth then led conversations in groups and informally. We looked to see if an element was mentioned across groups. The third criteria being how did they reflect on the park element when we visited the groups 2 to 4 weeks later in the post-park conversations? How sticky was this element and their feeling towards it? And lastly, did more than one group mention their experience? Additional considerations include, did the element help remove obstacles? If so, how? Did their enthusiasm with comments did their enthusiasm align with the comments from their adult community? This leads into our next section. On the next slide, Ellie will talk about obstacles.
So now that we've talked about why and how we designed this research, let's turn to the results of the research. So first, I will talk about some of the data on obstacles to park access. So we'll talk about some obstacles related to perceived conditions in the parks first. Number 1, safety was a frequently mentioned obstacle. Research participants expressed concerns about strangers, police presence, getting lost, and getting injured. The groups who had more prior opportunities for nature connection had fewer concerns, with safety being a deterrent to park enjoyment, but they still had safety concerns. This suggested that safety should be addressed by both awareness of conditions and also offering new experiences to change perceptions. Our second obstacle is lack of opportunities. So a lack of opportunities to gain skills needed to enjoy the parks. And the quote on the slide reads, "I want to get over my fear of water because I don't know how to swim, but I want to learn how to swim. I'm scared of the water because I don't know how to swim, and it stops me from going on a boat, but I want to know." And this is a quote from one of the Scout members of Troop 100. And youth wanted the chance to overcome some of these opportunity obstacles. They wanted additional training to learn to swim, bike, ski, ice fish, and other outdoor activities. And they wanted the opportunity to understand the park rules and felt a lack of opportunity to learn about activities to do in the parks. And our third obstacle on this slide is all of our focus groups had talk about significant experiences of racism in Minnesota natural spaces, including within our regional park and trail system. These concerns were about park inclusivity, such as lack of representative staffing, cultural history that was non-inclusive, promotional materials that were non-inclusive, lack of multilingual materials, and going to the park and there's no one like me there, which is a quote we heard from both adults and youth that we worked with. These experiences gave the message that parks are for white people. Next slide, please. These are some of our obstacles related to a social context. And we found these obstacles related to resources, scarcity of information and awareness, time constraints, and economic constraints. On the first one, awareness, you see some quotes from adults interviewed about lack of awareness. Youth often access the parks through adults. Sometimes they serve as gatekeepers to access for both of the generations. So awareness is an obstacle for both youth and the adults in their lives. A frequent comment from adults coming with youth on visits was, "I didn't even know this was here." Next, we see that time constraints are a challenge for families and also have special limitations for high school youth involved in school. And then finally, economic constraints. Cost is a major obstacle for a large number of the region's youth. 40% are in families within 250% of the poverty line. And this includes gas money, lack of public transportation that goes to our parks, and fees for programming and entrance. And so on the next slide, Lucia will talk about some of our findings.
Great, thank you, Ellie. So keeping these obstacles in mind, let's talk about findings about what connect youth to the park system. Next slide, please. Our first recommendation, we recommend that efforts to connect with youth prioritize investments in qualified staff. The most frequent and significant finding was how staff provided the opportunity to learn new skills, assured safety, invited cultural sharing, and raise awareness to encourage future park visits. In visiting the youth serving organizations after the park visit, we played a quiz game to see who could remember their experience the best. And one of the questions we always asked was, what was the name of the naturalist? It was a question that almost all the youth could answer correctly. Youth remembered the way that the park staff made them feel and the activities that they led. Next slide, please. Our second is desired amenities and activities. All groups except the Scouts wanted coaching and training in how to camp. Scouts have prior experience in this expertise in camping, so it makes sense. There was great enthusiasm for the possibility. Youth and parents wanted to try winter sports. This is the biggest opportunity gap obstacle we found. Many cultural components and cost obstacles are there when considering winter sports. Youth value connecting with their own community and nature. They wanted connections with their familiar community through cultural festivals, picnics, archery. Youth also wanted a chance to meet new people that they didn't already know through competitions and skill learning days. Youth and their supportive adults talked passionately about the need to remove obstacles for families through eliminating fees and scheduling programs, such as scheduling programs at night, all-day events, and free equipment rental. We found that application process to free access to parks for low-income youth and families were cumbersome and difficult to find, except for the extremely well-informed. And then number 3 on our next slide is all youth have relevant and prior experience. Third and final finding is one that we really want to emphasize. We recommend challenging the model about that talks about users as inexperienced. This creates the risk of defining a youth visitor as a blank slate or having a deficit that needs to be fixed. Instead, we found that the more accurate understanding is that all users approach their park visit using prior experiences, including personal experience, experiences of family or community, and cultural experience. Prior experiences shape what users expect the park to be. For example, the need to define what a natural resource-based park means. One participant told us, "When you said park, I thought you meant playground. I have a park like that near my house." Cultural knowledge enhances an experience with a sense of wonder and fun. One example is when a scout from Troop 100 told researchers that fishing is a Hmong thing. "We go with my dad and uncles. They like to fish, but I just go there to hang out and be with our family." Another scout commented, "This would be a good fishing spot. It looks like there'd be a lot of fish here." In this example, youth connected previous experience with family to finding a new fishing destination. Prior experiences also shape whether a park visit even happens. We were told by a leader in Outdoor Latino, we don't go to Anoka County for programming because of the dangers with ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Families don't want to go there because the government works with ICE. We independently confirmed that the sheriff in Anoka County arrested a legal resident of Anoka County and turned her over to Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. This prior experience circulated in the community across the Twin Cities and affected whether youth could visit the parks in Anoka County because their supportive adults found it too risky to take them. Next slide, please. Here are some highlights of our photo scavenger hunt that we held with the organizations of librarians in Minnesota. My personal favorite is the bottom middle. In our next slide, Ellie will talk about outputs and deliverables.
Thanks, Lucia. So our findings will be shared out in a number of ways, and these are just some of the specific deliverables coming out of this project listed here. First is a coloring and activity book. The image on the slide is an example of one of these coloring pages. The books will be shared with the youth-serving organizations we partnered with and other youth-serving organizations in the metro region, featuring activities to do in the parks, the findings from our research presented in an accessible and engaging way, and coloring pages that include images from our parks visits, like the one you see here. So it's just a fun and mindful way to reflect on our findings and research. We're also developing a detailed report and actionable summary, as well as an engagement toolbox to share ideas and resources from our study for replication and implementation for other agency usage. And then our presentations for various audiences, such as our presentation this evening and the launch of our Youth in Parks webpage. Next slide, please. So now that we've analyzed our findings, and before we go into our recommendations, let's center ourselves on why this research matters by looking back to our policy plan. All these questions that we're thinking about in our research are questions that matter for all of us who care about young people and stewardship of our park system. Our research presents data as generated by and analyzed by young people and our team in order to help answer these questions and really center a youth voice. We designed this research to provide implementing agencies and the council increased understanding to improve how the system serves youth in order to strengthen equitable usage. Next slide, please. So these are some of the recommendations specific to the council. The first is using council funding to support equity-focused continued connection between programming and planning, which often feels a disconnect. So bridging that gap and increasing visitation and engagement. The second, continued research with underserved youth, African American, Indigenous, disabled, and rural youth, youth experiencing homelessness or poverty. So this further engagement beyond the 5 youth-serving organizations that were involved in this initial research. Number 3, sustained research, programming, and engagement efforts by the council to connect youth at the outdoors, continuing with these efforts and addressing the obstacles that we identified here and working to remove those. Next slide, please. And then we have our recommendations specific to our implementing agencies. The first one, developing and adopting models for engaging with youth that value prior experience and cultural context. As Lucia mentioned, this is really critical, the valuing of prior experience, but instead of focusing on barriers, recognizing that prior experiences that users draw from help connect them to the outdoors and connecting with this prior experience. The second one for implementing agencies is deeper investment in cultural inclusivity, subsidized programming, and anti-racist park policy development. This is really critical in implementing agency hiring, planning, and programming. Do youth see themselves in the parks and whose history is really being represented? And our final one, agency partnerships with constituent-led youth-serving organizations. Organizations help to remove some of these key obstacles that we've identified. Existing trusting relationships help to allay fears about safety, maintain social ties, and address many of the main obstacles to parks visitation, so are critical in youth engagement in parks. Next slide, please. So we now invite your questions and comments, and we have our other research team members on as well to help with that. We would ask you to respond to 2 questions specifically that you can think about. First, what information from this report connects most directly with your priorities for the council? And the second, how can council collaboration with agencies and budget investments support connecting youth and parks? Thank you so much, and we will answer any questions.
So, committee members, Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was a great presentation, a lot of information, really valuable information. I'm wondering if we are promoting the parks through the schools and or through municipalities who may put together welcome packets for new residents and so forth to create more awareness of the regional park system.
Chair, council members, thank you so much for your question. It's a great question and very relevant to right now with a lot of people spending more time in the outdoors. Connecting with schools is definitely important and something that we heard from some of our youth that we worked with, that they had had prior experiences related to the parks with schools. And I think that specific to implementing agencies, they'd have more information about that. But in relation to kind of spreading information more about the parks for that has been something that we've been working with our implementing agencies to do outside of this research. I know been working with Dakota County on some food distribution sites that they're doing and handing out regional parks maps with those packets, as well as some park adventure things. And some of that stems from the work that we did with the naturalist and the programmers at Dakota County. So I think those are all really great ideas and things that we want to continue to push forward with our implementing agency staff. Thank you for the question.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Chair. This was a great presentation, one that I've been waiting for to have the communities kind of get engaged, and is really nice to see the visuals and get the feedback from the engagement. I know that I'm not surprised by what some of the answers were in terms of kids saying, I wish I knew how to swim, some of their fears, some of the cultural awareness pieces, and starting with the youth really makes a big difference in those areas. So this is a great start. I have a couple questions, and actually a few of them. It would be interesting to know. You said 2 of the organizations were involved with continued engagement. Who those organizations are, and then also, kind of what the total data was as far as total numbers of participation from each of the organizations. And then lastly, and to answer your question, as a council member, I would definitely be interested in how to make a big impact based on the information that you gathered. And in order to do that, of course, we would need investment. So as a council member, I would definitely be in support of additional investment to do some of the programming that was suggested by the outcomes of this survey. So definitely would like to see where that goes. This is a great start. And I'm sure it's just going to get better if we continue to support and invest.
Do any of the interns want to respond by chance? Okay.
Yeah, I can take a second to respond.
Okay.
Chair, council members, thank you again for your question. So the organizations that are involved, I know that Outdoor Latino is still involved with Dakota County, and they have upcoming free Zumba classes over Zoom that are happening in August and September. And so that's one of the partnerships that has emerged, and they are doing some other programming too. I believe the other one is Organizations of Liberians in Minnesota, working with Dakota County, and I see Darcy nodding, or with Three Rivers, and I see Darcy nodding. So I think that's a yes. And then in terms of the total data, I will hand it over to someone else in terms of the exact number of youth we worked with. And thank you again for the questions about, thinking about the bigger impact into the future. It's really great to hear that you're excited by this work, and we are too.
Thank you.
I want to quick jump in to talk about a little bit about the future impact. There's a quote that I didn't get a chance to read out loud to the group, but I wish to read it out loud now. But it's, "Thank you for bringing this team to work with our youth, because we have a research team that is mostly people of color. The kids can see that as young people of color, that they belong in the parks, that the parks are not just for white people, that working in the outdoors is something that they could do." That's a staff member from Urban Roots said that to us. So thinking about the future of parks and park planning. But as for the exact numbers of participants disaggregated into the different groups, I don't have that. I defer to, I think maybe Darcy for that.
Thank you, Chair Vento and Councilmember Chambliss and council members. So I really appreciate that question. So qualitative research is a little bit different than survey research in that, and also youth participant research. We really did not want young people to feel that they were a number. And we also really, we worked with the youth serving organizations as micro consultants. So they were paid a stipend for their expertise, and they recruited, we asked them to recruit between 10 and 20 young people, and also to invite at least 5 parents. And so it looked very different with different organizations. With Outdoor Latino, there was a tradition of parents and youth kind of participating in recreational activities together within that organization. And so at that event, I think we had about 8 youth and just as many adults, maybe 6 adults that came. In contrast with the Troop 100, the Scouts participated on their own. Same with Urban Roots. They come to youth come to Urban Roots as part of their job. And so we had Councilmember Chambliss, we had about 15 youth from Urban Roots come, and with Scouts we had well over 20. And our age group was 14 to 18, but they're a multi-age group, and we had 6 years old up to 20 years old, and we just we rolled with it. But in calculating, and then we had validity conversations, and so sometimes new youth were participated with the validity conversations and worked with us analyzing data, sort of identifying what was true and accurate about the data. And so we calculate that overall we had 85 youth distributed among the organizations, slightly smaller with Outdoor Latino, slightly larger number with Troop 100, and that the number of hours that each youth participated with us was between 2 and 10 hours across 2 different, up to 3 events with Urban Roots and 2 events with other groups. And then we had 6 adult focus groups, and we counted 43 supportive adults who were parents and staff members participating. So thank you.
I think Councilmember Johnson. Yes, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, again, I'll just commend you for this. This is really great work. I appreciate the approach. I appreciate the presentation. I really applaud you for the engagement. So I'm looking at the questions you're asking us. What most directly connects our priorities for the council? Well, clearly, it's people now who, quite frankly, we want to use the parks, but it's that future generation of young people, and then hopefully transitioning, as you mentioned earlier, having them when they decide to have children, it will be a generational shift, and we can get more and more people engaged. So I appreciate that approach. Secondly, how can the council, collaborate with agencies and budget investments? So I'm working on the Transportation Policy Committee, but also with the Network Next. So we're looking at the future of transit globally, and we're not trying to look at this constrained by resources. certainly in these times. But we're trying to say, you know, how do we set these priorities? What are the priorities? How do we set the priorities? Who's setting the priorities? And we have discussed, you know, the connection to parks. And I don't know, I've only been, you know, at Met Council for a year, but clearly when it's showing up here too, you know, we can have all the, you know, most wonderful programs there are, but if people cannot get there, that's a problem. And especially, you know, households that may be cost burdened or not even aware the parks are there, but then clearly needing to provide transportation opportunities to get there. So it helps me to maybe think, you know, certainly about budget investments. Also, how do we approach transit to the parks differently? You know, trying to think outside the box, and, you know, who else could partner with us to make sure that there are ways to come around this and provide that transit piece. Otherwise, we'll fail, I believe, miserably if we just do it based on the dollars that we have to operate our own system. So when I say things like that, even around engagement or around promoting our park system, engaging some of our major nonprofits in the community who are about diversity and inclusion, who are about social justice, who are about environmental justice, and making sure that future generations now and future generations, I think connecting to our parks serve all of those pieces. So once we keep moving along with this, I don't know how we would approach that, potentially thinking bigger, grander ways to get some of those others to help us out. And then, you know, it also is, it's not shocking, but it's still disturbing that people don't know the parks are there, and clearly not surprising that people think the parks are for white people. So we have, you know, a ways to go, but it's with this kind of really good work that start setting us on the course to include everybody and end up with a system that is much better represented in offerings and participation. So again, kudos to all of you. It helps make me think differently though when I'm in other committees, because it's all connected. So thank you.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say thank you to the staff and also to Darcy and the interns for all your hard work. The presentation really shows that this was a really thoughtful process, and you really engaged young folks who were very candid, and that's important. And I just hope that we can really consider their feedback and move forward with it. And I also want to echo Councilmember Johnson's comments that we have to kind of intersect our transportation policies more closely with our parks facilities. And in terms of that first question you asked of us, I really appreciate you asking the youth what they envision in the future, so that we can do programming and build out facilities that's more appropriate for different demographics wherever they may be. And we're not just in this project, we're not just fostering the next generation of parks users. I hope that what we're also doing is engaging the next generation of policymakers, and so that when these young kids 15, 20, 30 years from now, they'll be in our position and say, you know what, 15, 20 years ago when I was in middle school or high school, I was in part of a Met Council regional park study group, and now I want to apply to be on the Met Council. And that these folks are future policymakers too, and that we get them engaged now. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Great feedback from everyone. Anyone else? I can't see everybody on my screen, so please speak up if you want to comment. I'd like to add, and based on Councilmember Johnson's comments, it occurred to me perhaps the council could host a collaborative effort with the nonprofits. I can think of a number of them just off the top of my head who I know would be anxious to be at that table or in that Zoom to have a conversation about how we can achieve these goals. I think it'd be a terrific idea, and I'd be interested in helping further that conversation, but kind of a call to action. Since the death of George Floyd, there have been so many nonprofit organizations as well as organizations that exist for profits that have publicly stated that they want to be a part of good change and good trouble. And I think that the time is now, and I think that we just have a really great opportunity, thanks to the work of these interns and Darcy. I think we have a great opportunity to really push this, and I think hosting a collaborative effort with the agencies, along with nonprofits and maybe folks from the world of profit who would help invest in this with us. I don't know how we can do that. I know that there are laws that are going to limit some of it, but I think we can at least get the conversation going. Any other comments? Again, I can't see everyone, so if you're a council member who wants to chime in.
Madam Chair, may I ask one last question?
Sure, Councilmember Johnson.
And again, maybe it was with one of the groups that participated. Do you feel, a question back to you is, do you feel good about the diversity that did come forward? And I just want to know, did we have the Indigenous peoples community, Native community as part of this as well?
Anyone from the group want to respond?
This is Dan. Thank you for your question. We really appreciate it, as well as your feedback. And so we did not have Indigenous youth in our study. However, we do acknowledge that there is a lot of room for this study to grow and expand. And we are hoping in the future that when we conduct more youth in parks work, we will be able to focus and center Black and Indigenous youth here in the Twin Cities metro region.
And Madam Chair, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you, Madam Chair, for, your comments about the nonprofit community, because when you look at some of the major goals from some of our major nonprofits in the region, I think there could be great alignment, and especially around the youth, right? And, considering the history of the land, who owned the land, there's, I think, some real good trouble, good opportunity to get back to alignment for all people. And so if there's a way that we can support, align, bring more resources, I'd really be interested. I just want to be assisting and helping. And I know I have connections in my other job. I have connections to a major nonprofit and they're connected. So I think, to your point, Madam Chair, there'd be some interest in helping us as a public agency perhaps hear about what we're trying to do. And I, again, applaud you guys for your work. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And I would also like to add that many of the youth, when we were discussing with them and conducting our in-park experience, expressed that they would really like to learn more about Indigenous and Native American history. So yes, thank you for your comments and feedback.
Thank you. And I'd also like to add to as well that one of our findings is organizations matter. So that organizations help remove a lot of the obstacles. One example being transportation. That when I asked one of the Scout members how they were sorted into their patrols, they said that they're set up by location so that every youth member can get a ride to the events that they need to get to if they ever need one. So that's part of what we found as well in our research, is that organizations play a huge role in getting you to the parks. But they're a great resource.
Madam Chair, would you bear with me for one more question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And again, looking at today's presentation, and I'll use my words, but there might be different words, or maybe this isn't the right approach at all, but will you be able to do some pillars or categories, and not in a siloed kind of way, but clearly transportation and transit is something that we can take a lead on. But some of those other pieces of the puzzle, if we had core areas of focus to accomplish the body of work, then maybe we could help bring the other partners where we don't maybe have the leading strength in that to build a collaboration. I'm sorry, I'm very excited about all of this. And I can't say enough the great work you guys are doing. And I hope you'll stick with us because this is really, I think, could be the beginning of some good stuff. But you know, if there could be ways again to chunk out the work, and then if appropriate, you know, we could again come around with partnerships in more specificity when we get to that point.
This is Darcy. If I can comment, I really, committee members, Chair Bento, I really appreciate that comment, and we certainly can work. And when there's a lot of results in this research that, but I think we appreciate your suggestion of thinking about dividing it up in terms of kind of the different areas of the council in terms of the recommendations. So thank you for that.
Madam Chair, this is Councilmember Wolf.
Yes, Councilmember Wolf.
Thanks. I've been just sort of sitting here taking this all in and thinking about it, and thinking about the remarks about wanting to see people who look like them amongst the youth. I was looking at some of the organizations that the research was done with, and they seem it to be they include people of color, but some of the organizations are people of all the same color. And there's a lot of people, you know, that are mixed race and stuff that nobody looks like them. That happened to my husband all the time as he was growing up. But I'd like to hear from organizations that are not all homogenous within their organization, and see what sort of experiences and thoughts we have from those groups also.
It's a good comment, Councilmember Wolf. I'm not sure the other organizations, but from what I know about Urban Roots, they are not a homogenous group. I think they're pretty diverse, or at least have been. Councilmember Lee may know more, because I think he has two brothers that were a part of that organization, but that's a good comment.
Yeah, and this is Gunnar Carlson from the research team. Just to speak to that for a minute, I think when the youth are saying, you know, people that look like me, they're usually referring to people of color. Sometimes they will say, you know, they will identify as their race or ethnicity, but a lot of times when that comment is made, they're just referring to seeing more people of color. And we did spend a lot of time with the Urban Roots youth, and they are not an affinity group, as I would say. You know, they're not homogenous. So I think that's more what they're referring to, but it is nice to see. And the reality is groups like Urban Youth are probably more of what you see, but the groups that we worked with were identified more around affinity or around some sort of identity.
Chair, this is Councilmember Chambliss.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. And I agree with Wendy. I also like the fact that you said, you know, organizations matter. You know, some of the groups may be more homogenous, but there are cultural differences, like with Blacks. You know, are you considering Black both, you know, Blacks from historical slavery and immigrants, or are you looking at them as the same? So, you know, there are some cultural differences. And if you have more organizations, you have a better chance of, you know, getting a better blend of different cultures and ethnicities. So, you know, encouraging that. And I heard, you know, we don't want to look at people as numbers. Some people don't want to look at race. They don't want to, you know, they want to say people are people, right? But there are differences in interests and cultural differences. And in order to make sure that we get good representation sometime, and also the investment, we have to look at those things. So sometimes explaining that to folks, saying that, you know, we're not trying to peg you. We're not trying to make you a number, but we want to make sure that there's good representation and that we can get you the opportunities that you're looking for.
Okay, any other comments? I don't think I see any other hands. I'm missing someone. Darcy, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to thank Councilmember Chambliss for that comment. And while we do have the demographics of the organizations that they reported, so we know the demographics, for example, of Urban Roots and the demographics of the other 4 organizations. And then we also, Three Rivers Park District Teen Council, which was another group. But I just really appreciated that feedback. And I also wanted to point out that our colleague Gunnar Carlson was here with us too. He cut out at the beginning. So thank you to all of you.
Well, kudos to the entire intern team, Gunnar and Lucia and Sarah and Ellie. You did a great job. And Darcy, thanks so much. This has been a great conversation. Excellent. With that, we'll move on to our last information item from Jerome Benner. It's the 2019 Agricultural Preserves Program. Jerome, you're on.
Madam Chair, thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Jerome Benner II, Senior Planner and Local Planning Assistant, and I will be presenting the 2019 report on the Metropolitan Ag Preserves Program. Next slide, please. Council members, just a brief overview before we get started. The Metropolitan Agricultural Preserves Program was established in 1980 by the Minnesota State Legislature and has been monitored by the Metropolitan Council since 1982. This program was created to encourage the use of agricultural land for food production and provide means for preservation of areas planned for long-term agricultural use in the 7-county metropolitan area through local and regional planning efforts. The program, through a certification process, designates land as eligible for program enrollment. Communities are expected to plan accordingly in their local comprehensive plans and zoning ordinances. These areas are also mapped within their respective comprehensive plans. In order to be eligible for enrollment, the Agricultural Preserves Program parcels should be 40 acres or more and remain in the program for at least 8 years. Now, there are circumstances where lesser acreages are acceptable. These exceptions must meet specific criteria, and these criteria are set out in state statute. However, most recently, last year, there was a new provision introduced to the legislature regarding an early termination option for landowners. Under this new provision, landowners can at any point apply for early termination out of the agricultural preserves status with the local authority or the local government. The local authority needs a majority vote of its council and board members to approve this request. Agricultural preserve property owners receive a property tax reduction as a part of this program. The credit comes from county conservation funds, from mortgage registration and deed transfers, and also the state conservation and general funds. More about the program funding is included, we'll get to later in this presentation here. Enrollment includes the landowner applying for the program, providing parcel information, and an affidavit from the authority certifying the parcel for long-term agricultural use, and the local authority certifying eligible lands by resolution. Next slide, please. Council members, this graph that you see here in front of you was not included in the report. However, I did want to give you all a kind of big picture of the enrollment since 2000. So this figure shows the total acres enrolled in the program in the Twin Cities metro area. As you can see, in 2009, there was a very sharp decline in enrollment, which was at its lowest at 180, just below 180,000 acres, and which is consistent with the market recession. Then enrollment started picking back up with the market rebound, when many landowners were enrolling back into the program. And there was an upward trend, as you can see here, until about 2013. Since then, we have noticed there has been a slight decline of just over 7,000 acres falling out of the program, which is about a 4% decrease from 2013 to 2019. Next slide, please. Council members, here you see the figure 1 of the report illustrates the breakdown of acres by county from 2000 to 2019. Carver County, indicated here in orange, has the highest number of acres enrolled in the region, just over 103,000, followed by Dakota County, shown in gray, with just over 70,000. And all counties experienced a decline in enrolled acres from the previous year, which has been relatively consistent over the past 6 years of the program. I do just want to point out quickly that you may only see 6 counties here, and that's because Ramsey County is a fully developed part of the region, and no acres or there's no participants enrolled in the program within Ramsey County. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a map of where all the acres are enrolled across the region. As you can see, and based on how it coincides with our previous graphs, Carver and Dakota County share the lion's share of the parcels enrolled within the region, with a strong concentration in the southern portion of Carver County and also along the western and northern parts of Carver. And also in Dakota County, you have some particularly along the eastern portion and also in the south. And with the remaining counties, you see some peppered out through Scott County, Hennepin, Anoka, and Washington, and of course, Ramsey, with no acreage there. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier in the report, we get a little bit of how the funding element of this program works. So the program is funded by a $5 fee collected by the counties on mortgage registrations and deed transfers. Counties retain half of this in the County Conservation Fund, and send the other half divided equally between the Minnesota Conservation Fund and the State General Fund. If the amount in the County Conservation Fund is not sufficient to reimburse jurisdictions, counties can get money from the State Conservation Fund. If that is not sufficient either, then the money is drawn from the state fund. So in Carver County, for example, there was just over $20,000 paid out of the county fund to participants for nearly 104,000 acres. The county had to draw around 198,000 from the State Conservation Fund and State General Fund to supplement the remainder of the reimbursement. And it's only, just a quick note, only Carver and Dakota counties had to draw upon additional funds from the state to reimburse their participants, which makes the most sense. So they both have the highest number of acres enrolled into the program. And with that, council members, next slide, please. Concludes my brief report on the Agricultural Preserves Program, and I'm happy to field any questions at this time.
Again, I can't see all of the faces, so if you have a question, please speak up.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a quick comment, but this is such a cool program that I only learned about maybe 9-10 months ago when I had an inquiry from a St. Paul resident, and I had never heard of the program before. And this is one of those really cool things about the council that it just astounds and astonishes us as me, myself, at least, as a council member, where the Mayor Council is such a huge animal that every week we're still learning the amazing things that we do and the policies that we touch and the amazing work that the staff carry on every day. And I just really find this program really fascinating. And kudos to the staff for making this work and uplifting all of our region together.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee. I want to echo that. Mr. Benner, I have a cousin who's a 5th-generation farmer on the family farm in southeastern Minnesota. Our great-great-grandfather came from Ireland and started this farm back in 1865, I believe it was. And that farm is a big part of the history of our family. And I have a number of photos as well as a whole ton of memories of feeding the chickens and going out in the garden with my aunt, and just great memories, particularly this time of year. And I'm really grateful to know that this program exists as well. And really appreciate this report. Thank you.
Madam Chair, council members, thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. With that, Director Barajas, do you have anything you want to report or add that I may have missed?
No, Councilmember Venta, you covered everything. You were a little quick for me. I was to introduce Jerome to you as this presentation, but that's quite all right. We are excited to have Jerome. He's been with us for a little less than a year, but as you can see, he's a consummate professional and really knows his stuff. So no introduction needed.
Great, thank you. I apologize for that.
No problem.
Anyone else? Well, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Go enjoy the rest of this gorgeous evening, everyone. Take care.